Good morning. Welcome to Facebook Live. I'm Marsha Mullin, the Chief Curator here at the Hermitage, and we are starting this new series while we are closed to the public for the coronavirus or COVID-19. And our first topic this morning is very timely. It's epidemics. And so welcome you to listen and watch, and here we go. There were a lot of epidemics, clearly, in Andrew Jackson's lifetime. He himself was the victim of one, smallpox, when he was 14 years old and a prisoner in South Carolina during the Revolutionary War. His brother actually died of smallpox, and he had it at the same time as Jackson. Shortly after Jackson recovered, his mother went to Charleston to nurse sick soldiers, and she caught another disease called typhus, or as it was called then, ship's fever. And that killed her. There were waves and waves of cholera epidemics during the 19th century. It didn't go continuously. It would be very active for a couple of years, then it would die down, and then it would be active again. And in 1832, there was a big episode of the cholera epidemic, and Jackson received a book from a doctor who was writing about the issues of cholera and how to treat it. Of course, we know that medicine at that time was pretty limited as far as understanding how disease started and how it could be cured. And Jackson was a big fan of bloodletting and purging, which is just what it sounds like. And he was supported in this belief by one of his favorite physicians, Dr. Philip Singh Physic of Philadelphia, who was also a big believer in those two methods. We have here on the table a lancet that belonged to Andrew Jackson, which could be used for bloodletting. You would nick a small vein or artery and let out a lot of blood. This actually had the feeling of some relief to the patient because it lowered your blood pressure. Of course, then the patient body had to recoup all that blood that had been let out. So in the end, it wasn't very satisfactory as a methodology, but it did bring some quick relief. One disease that regarding cholera, the most famous cholera victim of the 19th century was probably President James K. Polk, who died just 3 months after the end of his presidency of cholera after he came back to Nashville. Another disease which was rampant in the 19th century, and it wasn't even an epidemic or a pandemic, it was called endemic. It was just always there, and that was tuberculosis. Jackson's niece, Emily, who served as his White House hostess, had tuberculosis and in fact died of it just at the very end of Jackson's second term as president. She was very ill. She had a pallor, she coughed, night sweats, all kinds of symptoms, and she, like most people at that time with tuberculosis or consumption as they called it, she just powered through until she couldn't anymore because they had no idea what caused it, and they didn't even realize how contagious it was. And so as a mother, she was hugging and taking care of her children all the time she had this consumption. So it was a big problem, and things that we now realize are not the best way to do things were very common at that time. Do you have any questions, Andy?
Is there anything else on this table that Jackson might have used?
Well, he didn't actually use them to treat disease, but he has his Bible and his prayer book here on the table. Jackson was very resigned to death. It reads very strangely to us today to read his letters where he wishes people a happy immortality and to not be afraid of death. But as an orphan who'd lost both of his parents and who had also experienced these diseases either in himself or amongst his friends and family, this belief in the afterlife and a good death was very important to him.
What about some of the other self-care methods did Jackson use?
Well, he did a lot of bed rest just because his various problems made him tired. He didn't really have any diseases that we know of. Most of his problems in his later life, after he recovered from smallpox, stemmed from his bullet wounds, the bullet in his chest that never got removed, and the bullet that was in his arm that was there for several years. And they caused massive infections and bleeding and all kinds of problems. And so he also was kind of an experimenter with different medicines. There was one called matchless sanative, which probably was a combination of mercury and alcohol, which he was a big believer in. Mercury was a very common medicine in those days, used for treating all kinds of diseases.
We got a question from John. What was the average lifespan back then, and did Jackson outlive it?
I think they now think that most people, if they survive childhood, could live to be the same kinds of ages people live to now. But the overall average is brought down by the fact that so many people died as children below the age of 5.
And Jackson was how old when he died?
71.
71. Perfect.
No. 78. I always get it mixed up.
Well, thank you, Marsha, for taking time out this morning to chat with us. While we are closed right now, we're going to be bringing these virtual visits to you on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you'll have to tune in next Tuesday to see the topic that we have on tap for you. Marsha, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, while we are closed, you can still support the Hermitage by visiting our website.
And we hope to see you
Remember
guys.
this.
And we hope to see you guys back here on Facebook Live next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you.